So, you decided that you wanted to start learning a new language for work or for fun, or you're thinking about it, you're kind of dancing around it, but you're not completely sure because there's some fears that are holding you back. So, what are those fears? I bet I have an idea. There's some common fears that we all have, and believe it or not, most of those fears are unfounded. The first common fear that most people have that keeps them from learning a new language is, I'm too old. Now, people can define old as 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70. Or in some cases, I've already gotten out of college and I don't think I can learn anything else. Actually, that's not true. In fact, scientists have discovered that the same area of our brain that's responsible for learning music is also responsible for aiding us in learning languages. So think about it. How many new song lyrics have you learned in the last month? That's right. So if you added all the song lyrics you were able to learn, you applied that towards learning language, you'd already be pretty far ahead in the game. Now, one tip, if you are worried that you've been out of school for a while and you don't really know if that language learning is going to stick, is to use what's called modalities. That basically means learning the language in several ways. Instead of just writing it down and learning verb tenses, it's a great idea to write them, read them, speak them, listen to a CD, say for example Shakira, that's in Spanish, that has music, and as many ways as you can of using all of your senses in order to make that language stand out for you. As a matter of fact, the more senses that you use in learning a language, the higher your comprehension. And if for some reason you are a little quote-unquote older, say you're 50, 60, 70, 80, or if you're actually old and say you're 90 plus, don't worry about it. Because, as anyone who's gotten a little maturity will know, older learners are much better at intentionally learning things. We've been out of school for a while. We've been away from all those years that we were forced to learn something we weren't really concerned about or we didn't really care about. And we're able to apply more discipline into learning, retaining, and enjoying what we're learning. The second reason that people avoid learning a new language is that they worry that they don't have time. In order to keep from convincing yourself that you really don't have time, think of ways that you can incorporate learning a language into your daily life. There are plenty of free apps that you can get for a smartphone. Try Duolingo. Completely free. There's no credit card required. Put it on your smartphone, and when you're in line at the bank or when you're waiting to get your food at lunch, just turn it on, check it out, learn a few vocabulary words, also learn some grammar. The great things about these apps is that they're good at integrating different parts of speech like nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions, into full sentences. You don't feel as if you're only stuck learning verb drills that are just completely out of context and don't feel as if they're actually helping. Also, think about learning a language as an investment. No matter what field you're in, knowing a second, third, fourth language really helps you get ahead. And I've learned as a writer, the more languages I'm able to communicate in, the more money I have coming in, the more connections I'm able to make, and the more stable my income has become. Also, if you're currently in a job that you're not crazy about and you would like to leave eventually, you're probably dealing with a lot of stress. I know when I was working full-time and I was working for the government, I absolutely hated the time that I spent at my job, and that caused a lot of anxiety. One of the things I used to get rid of the anxiety was to perform some repetitive tasks. One of those was conjugating a verb. Whenever I'd get upset, I would just talk to myself, not out loud in front of other people, but I'd just say to myself, voy, vas, va, vamos, van. Voy, vas, va, vamos, van. Soy, eres, es, somos, son. Soy, eres, es, somos, son. Now that's kind of like counting sheep because it relaxes you. It also forces your brain to think because you have to remember I, you, he, we, they. And as you learn more verb tenses, speaking, hablando, working, trabajando, And before you know it, you're calmed down, you're remembering your verb tenses, and if you have an app on your phone, you can plug them in and start making sentences. The third reason that keeps many people from learning a new language is the fear that it's simply too expensive. That's due in part to the fact that a lot of us feel that in order to learn anything, we have to have a teacher. Which makes sense. I mean, we spend, the first 12 years of our lives with a teacher in a classroom doing very relegated things and learning in a certain way. But if you're an adult, then you have the opportunity to learn when, where, and how you want to, which means you don't have to pay for a teacher. You can get a free app and put it on your phone. You can go online to blog. You can put the blogs into your RSS and learn words that way. You can also, if you're really feeling of interest, you can also get foreign language books on your Kindle or your Nook and read them at your leisure. Now, don't worry if you don't speak the language fluently or if you don't understand every single word that's being said. Lots of people who speak several languages have learned to speak those languages because they've read books in the language that they wanted to learn. The more exposure you get to the language, the more you understand how it works. You understand where the verbs and the nouns and the adjectives are. And before you know it, it becomes more familiar to you. Number 4, and the last reason that holds back lots of people from learning a new language, is the fear that I'm not good at learning a language. Personally, my opinion is that learning a language is just like learning to drive a car. Everyone can do it to a certain level. Some people are better at it. Some people are more conscious about it. Some people just consider it to be a necessity to get from point A to point B. Most of us have it within us to learn how to do it. And another part of that fear that I'm not good at learning languages is that a lot of times the options that we have for learning languages are very limited. Growing up in the US, the most common language that was taught was Spanish. If you lived up in the northern states, you'd probably have Spanish or French because we're so close to the Canadian border. I'm good at Spanish. After living in Texas for 7 years, I heard lots of Spanish. I've reached the point that I can understand it, I can write it, and I can speak it fluency level. But to be completely honest, it's not my best language in the world. I don't feel as comfortable with it. And once I got out of college, after 12 hours of academic Spanish classes, which, by the way, I had a straight A average in, after I got out, I decided I was going to teach myself a language that I actually wanted to learn. So I started teaching myself Swedish, and I learned that all languages are not created equal. I feel more comfortable with the words, with the word structure. Some of the Romance languages, especially French, are very reflexive, and really the word order doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We, to John, give him wine. Doesn't make as much sense to me as I am going to the club tomorrow, for example. So it may be that the particular language that you were exposed to really wasn't the language for you, and there may be a language that's a lot easier for you to learn. So start doing a lot of investigation. Figure out which one is actually going to be easier for you. Play around. And again, this is another plug for Duolingo. I promise you they're not paying me to say this, but an app that has several different languages that you can choose from are just fabulous because you're able to play around and see which one you naturally gravitate towards. Then once you find one that you actually feel an affinity for, you can start learning it. Okay, those are the most common fears that hold most of us back from learning a new language. And if you'd like some more information on learning a language and becoming a writer who writes in many different languages like I do, then head on over to my blog, www.shorttranslation.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have a free report, the 13 most common mistakes new freelancers make. And also don't forget you can subscribe to this channel by hitting that big red subscribe button. And you'll be able to see all the new videos as they're delivered up on YouTube. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.